What's the scariest, creepiest, or most disturbing thing that's ever happened in your house? I was 14 and my family had just moved to a big and kinda rundown farmhouse that was kinda creepy but cheap to rent. The closest neighbors were pretty far away and a cornfield surrounded most of our property. One night, around 2 AM, I woke up to the light in the hallway going on. I'm a really light sleeper. A few minutes later my dog starts whining outside my door and scratching to be let in. I get up and let him in and he crawls under my bed to sleep. He does this sometimes, but had never woken me up to be let in before. I was a little weirded out but also pretty tired, so fell back asleep without much thought. I wake up again a little while later to my bedroom door creaking. I see fingers wrapped around the side of the door as it is being slowly pushed open. In a half asleep kind of stupor I ask who it is and a man clearly trying to imitate a woman assures me that he is my mother just checking on me. I keep saying no you're not. You don't sound like my mother, and he keep assuring me that he is. I obviously am not fully awake yet, or I would have noticed how creepy and weird this exchange was. Suddenly, the door starts being pushed even further open and the hand pushes through the door, followed by an arm, and I realize the person is coming into my bedroom. I start freaking out and screaming when I realize what is happening. My dog jumps out from under my bed and lunges at the door, causing the person to shut it quickly and not allowing me to see his face or anything at all. By this time, my mom has woken up from my screaming and starts yelling to me asking if I am okay. She comes down the hall to my room and says that she saw a big figure with stockings on his head standing outside my door. My mom started screaming then too, and the person ran down the back staircase of our house, which had a door and simply looked like a closet, so they had prior knowledge of its existence, apparently, or they wanted to hide in a closet, and then ran out the back door into the cornfield. Nothing in my house was stolen and there was no evidence that the person that had broken in wanted anything other than to come into my room. I don't think I've been the same since this happened and I still feel incredibly anxious even thinking about it. During a pretty powerful ice storm in 1995, our power went out. The house alarm was on a backup generator and around midnight it went off. As soon as it did, we started hearing loud banging coming from somewhere inside the house. After a few moments of understandable cowering, we grabbed aluminum baseball bats and started to patrol the house. There was no one downstairs. There was no one upstairs. We reset the alarm and went back to sleep. Not 15 minutes later, the alarm goes off a second time, followed by another bang 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 from inside the house. Now we're calling the cops, locking bedroom doors. At the time we had rabbits, and we had to bring them inside in order to protect them from the storm. They were hanging out with food bowls in a shower on the other side of the house, so checking in on them was a bit like walking through a graveyard blindfolded. The alarm goes off 3 times in all, each time followed by the banging. It takes the cops an hour and a half to show up. We live between 2 counties and it seems like there's always a fight over who has to deal with our problems. The cops search through the house with their superior flashlights and hip-holstered courage when the alarm goes off for a 4th time. One of the cops comes back to us confused and terrified, asking what the heck those giant things are in our shower. People always expect rabbits to be smaller than they really are. As it turned out, an electrical short was causing the alarm to go off periodically, and whenever it went off, the rabbits with their sensitive hearing would kick their food bowls against the walls of the acoustically resonant shower in protest. Taking a pee in the basement bathroom that is never used when the biggest millipede I've ever seen comes slithering out of the shower drain. Many years ago, my mom came downstairs early in the morning, walked into the kitchen and then ran back upstairs shrieking that the drawers were moving in and out all by themselves. My dad, ever the practical man, went downstairs, observed said drawers opening and closing, then calmly walked into the kitchen and opened the, very small, cabinet beneath the phantom drawers. He discovered my very tiny 5-year-old brother crammed in there, moving the drawer above him in and out, grinning like the love child of Julia Roberts and Anne Hathaway. My mom still hasn't lived that one down. TLDR. Little brother trolled my mom by hiding in a tiny cabinet. My mom came, moving in and out, very tiny 5-year-old brother crammed in there, in and out, grinning. I used to live in a basement level apartment. One night, About 1 AM, I'm doing my business on the toilet. I got kind of caught up in the book I was reading and ended up sitting there for half an hour. By chance I looked up, and at the window, which was about head height, was a middle-aged man, lying prone, looking right at me. We made eye contact, and he didn't move, just contorted his face into a toothy rictus. I ran the frick out of there. My first thought was oh god, my second thought was I wonder if he wiped first. Creepiest was probably termites. They sit in your walls for weeks. You begin seeing individual ones randomly around your house. Then one day, they swarm. I distinctly remember having the odd impression that the carpet was moving, and then realizing that there were thousands of termites crawling all over the place. Then the battle of vacuum versus termites began. At my childhood home, it used to be apartments, and some random lady jumped off the roof, survived, hobbled upstairs and jumped again. She made sure she landed on the spikes of the picket fence the second time around. A kid did this during lunch break in high school, jumped from the 3rd floor and survived, so he went back up and jumped again. He survived, and security grabbed him and he was never seen again. One summer while growing up we noticed we were getting more wasps in the house than usual. A week or so later we noticed a small hole in the dining room wall where they seemed to be coming in. We called an exterminator, and he discovered that there was a massive hive built into our wall, and they had only just dug out the hole into the dining room, apparently in preparation for a full-scale invasion. As a boy who was convinced that he was going to die by killer bees before he ever reached high school, this scared the ever-loving crap out of me. Better to find out during the day at least, as opposed to getting surprise stung by hundreds of wasps in the middle of the night when you blindly stumble into the kitchen for a glass of water. I live alone, renting the 1st floor of an old house. My entrance and bathroom are additions. One morning in the dead of the Canadian winter I was taking a shower, and I heard the bathroom door unlatch and creak open. Not unusual, it's an old house and a creaky addition. Happens once in a while. So I'm standing in the shower weighing my options. On the one hand I could ignore it, but if I do, it's going to get cold in the bathroom quick. On the other hand I could reach out, suffer the indignity of a really cold arm temporarily, and close it. I should mention at this point that I have a fantastically strong glasses prescription. I decide to stick my head out of the shower to reconnoiter the situation, and discover, filling most of the rest of the bathroom, a fuzzy hospital green blob shouting incomprehensibly at me. I'm proud to say at this point I emitted a reasonably manly low-pitched HAY instead of a high-pitched squeal. The blob keeps shouting at me, and I keep saying yes, what, hello, what, why, what? I eventually understand, through a thick Caribbean accent, that the blob is a housekeeper, who did not read the landlord's instructions to only go to the 2nd and 3rd floor, and rather than knocking and shouting and making the typical I'm here noises, decided to stalk silently to the bathroom where someone was obviously taking a shower, go in, wait for someone to stick their head out and start shouting at them. Get out of here, you nosy little pervert, or I'm gonna slap you silly. My doorbell rang in the middle of the night about 4 years ago. I went and looked out the window. We lived on the 2nd floor of a duplex, but the front entrance was at ground level and led to a private stairwell, and there was a guy just standing on the porch. I watched him for a minute. He went next door, then to the next house, then started walking back toward my place. During all this, my wife had called 911 to report this suspicious person. As he reached my front sidewalk again, the police arrived and got out of the car, had him place his hands on the hood of the car and emptied his pockets, the contents of which included a gun I could see clearly from my living room window. They bagged up his belongings, cuffed him and placed him in the backseat of the police cruiser. I never heard a thing again, and, needless to say, I didn't sleep that night. I cannot help but feel like this should be an SNL skit about a black guy's car breaking down in a white neighborhood. When I was much younger, my sister, 9-10, got locked out of the house late at night, and pretty much nobody knows how. She's the quiet type, and wears hearing aids that are removed at night. The details are a bit hazy, but it was really freaking odd. Anyway, eventually she starts knocking, and my mom lets her in around 11 PM. which was almost 3 hours after our normal bedtime at that age. She just goes upstairs like nothing happened, even though she was locked out of the house at night, in the cold, for presumably more than 3 hours. Something like this demands explanation, but there just was none. The next morning, we asked and she just said, "Oh, it's okay. I was sleeping outside." What? Oh, I was just sleeping outside. Okay. She just walked downstairs and slept outside. Completely 100% out of character. Later that day, we get back from school and walk past the bathroom window. On the side of the house there are barefoot feet marks and finger claw marks under the window. Like vicious, rough finger marks and multiple dirty foot marks on the wall. Hey, was that you, sis? No. Are you sure you didn't do it? Yeah, that's about it. I didn't question much after that, and it never happened again. Just too young to think anything of it, or to question more. I was pretty young, naive, and didn't make a connection to anything more. Thinking back, WTF, TL, DR. Sister randomly sleeps outside. Wake up with no explanation and claw marks on the side of the house. Sleepwalking and your sister is part Wolverine. I was having an intense lucid nightmare in which I became convinced that my parents were in danger and I had to contact them. Aware that I was dreaming, I was desperately trying to find a way to wake up or contact them from within my dream. I was completely distraught, convinced that they would die, when some sort of spirit guided me to this ridiculous machine through which I could call the waking world. It was a mess of levers, dials, buttons and switches, and I had to wind it up to get it to start working. I frantically pressed, wound and jabbed at the thing until suddenly it sparked into life and I could hear a crackled faint ringtone. Suddenly it went through and I heard my mother say hello before I abruptly woke up. I was lying in bed for just a few minutes calming down from the intensity of the dream before my mum called me. She asked why I had called her from the house phone and hung up just moments before. The only house phone is 3 floors away from mine. I have never sleepwalked in my life and I woke up in bed just after she received the call. Having a party with a bunch of mates. 2 of them went to crash out in my room. Apparently a disagreement on who was sleeping on the bed versus the floor broke out and quickly escalated into a fight. Lo and behold, one of them just happened to be carrying that night. He pulls the gun out. He says it was to put it out of the way so as to not shoot someone, and the other friend sees the gun, tries to wrestle it away, and they end up discharging the gun in my room. Into the floor, mind you. The floor right above where the rest of us are still drinking in the kitchen. Never found a bullet. I can only imagine that it must have hit a beam in the ceiling floor. That was a bit frightening. One particular week when I was 16, my parents were out of town for 2 weeks. This meant that I had the whole house to myself, and no neighbors for about half a mile. I made some mac and cheese, put some of it in a bowl, went to the bathroom, and when I got back, the macaroni was gone. I must have peed my way into the Twilight Zone or something. I once made 2 sandwiches for myself, and when I took them to the living room to eat them, I noticed I only used 3 slices of bread. The sandwiches were stacked on my plate, so I just figured I was being retarded when I made them. I went back to the kitchen and got a 4th slice, but when I came back, my sandwiches had the 4 original slices again. It was like some David Blaine crap. I'll try and keep this short. When I was 10 years old, my parents bought a condemned house to be renovated by us. This would be a year-long process. When it came time to sign papers for the house, the former owner nonchalantly mentioned that her brother, that has been in prison for 10 years, is about to get out of prison. His name is Jimmy. She said he had somewhat of a split personality. One moment he was an angel, the next he had a shotgun pointed at your face. We didn't know what to expect, and as a little boy, I was a little nervous about it, and we were locked in the contract as we had already signed the papers. Months had gone by and we had been working on the house. Then all of a sudden one day, we find that the driveway was barricaded, and someone had crap on the front porch. It was Jimmy. He had put all of our construction equipment in the driveway to block us, and then pinched a loaf on our porch. We called the cops, had a restraining order put on him, and didn't really see him for a while. Now, why was he in prison? He and a friend of his got drunk one night. His friend stated that he wanted to kill himself, and then Jimmy said that he would just do it for him. So Jimmy found a stick and stabbed his friend and killed him. But it didn't end there. Then Jimmy poured wax over his friend's eyes, cut him into several pieces, and spread the body parts all over the town we lived in. He also killed someone out of self-defense in prison. We had finished renovating our house and were all moved in. Jimmy had not shown up for a while, which is what creeped me out. I shared a room with my brothers. This room was near the front porch. My mind played with me for a solid year. I barely slept because I thought Jimmy was outside my window, just waiting to pour wax over my eyes. A couple more months go by, and Jimmy shows up one day. He wanted to come in and apologize to us for what he did to the house. My siblings and I are standing at the door, watching my dad outside talking to him. My dad said no of course, and told him to leave. That was the last time we saw Jimmy. He never really did anything to hurt us, but just the thought scared me for a long time. Additional thought. One of my goals in life is to make a Western film. I want to use Jimmy as inspiration for the story a character in the movie. I found a dead rat after smelling it for a week. I picked it up with a gloved hand and it exploded with maggots coming out of every orifice. Your username makes the story all the more hilarious. I moved into a house built in 1890 and I have been doing a lot of rehabbing. I cut a hole in the kitchen ceiling to run a vent. The ceiling was full of leaves, newspapers bits, in German, and other rubbish. After the first few handfuls, I pulled out a long, 24 section of a woman's red hair. I've heard that they used to insulate houses with hair, so I wasn't completely freaked out. Then I see a really old baby shoe sticking out of the debris. Keep in mind I can't see in the hole as it is above my ladder. I'm thinking they had better not be a fricking leg bone sticking out of this shoe. Luckily there wasn't, but I did find 3 shoes, baby, toddler, adult woman, and a lot more newspaper and a couple of baskets. The shoes are from the early 20th century I think. My guess is that the attic opened into the walls and a bunch of random crap fell through the walls and into the kitchen ceiling. That baby shoe sure creeped me out though. One of the more disgusting things I can think of is my GF and I had just got a puppy. He was being crate trained at night, so when we went to bed, we would place him in his crate, padded, right by our bedside so that he could see we were right there. Everything is fine except one night he had diarrhea all over his bed crate. I hear it happening and as I'm walking over and turning the light on, I see that he is lapping it up. Horfeed, I yell no, and just as I'm running over to get him out of the crate he starts vomiting said diarrhea vomit all over himself and me. It was a pretty crappy night. Funny side note, the next morning, I take him outside to the front yard so that he can do his thing. Now mind you, he'd just been ingesting poop and pooping out of both ends just hours earlier, so things were still moving around inside if you will. Anyways, so I'm standing on the front lawn next to him waiting for him to pee, and this couple are walking by and they see him and say to me, "Oh, what a cute puppy," and then as if on command, our puppy lets out this loud belch and lifts his little tail and farts a big wet one. The looks on their faces, priceless. Ah, the classic poo bath, for when dogs want to take it up a notch. My apartment building screams. The building has 3 apartments in it, so there aren't many people around here. When you leave my apartment there's a little stairwell hallway sort of room that just goes outside to the front of the building. My boyfriend and 2 friends of mine were standing in that hallway, and they all heard a scream, and it wasn't coming from any sort of apartment, but my friend says it sounded like it was right behind him in the hallway with him. The second time I was in my room and I had some headphones on while I was doing some homework. I thought I heard a scream downstairs, but since I had music playing I figured I was hearing things. 5 minutes later my roommate comes into my room asking if I heard it. She had been standing in the kitchen when she heard it outside in the hallway, and she said it was so loud and quick but it sounded like a female. Then the other night my boyfriend and I were leaving to go out to eat and we're walking down the stairwell and halfway out the front door when we hear it right behind us, as if it was on the stairwell. At first when I heard the other 2 stories, I figured it was a girl in second apartment, since one apartment is full of all boys and the other has 2 girls. But it wasn't a scream from an apartment, because the sound would be sort of muffled because of the thick walls between the apartments. This scream was definitely in the stairwell with us. None of us have any explanation for it. We've walked around the stairwell trying to recreate the sound if it was creaking floorboards or a squeaky door, but nothing. The girl they have under the stairs screams whenever someone walks on her. Done. When I was 10 years old, my room was right next to a chimney that wasn't used anymore. After coming back from a vacation, I was glad to be able to sleep in my bed again. At about 10 at night, right when I was in a deep sleep, the sound of screeching and scratching fills every inch of my room in a cacophony of terror. Turns out bats had moved in when we were away, but at the time I honestly thought I was going to be eaten. In my old house, a man had died in our living room of natural causes. The weird part is that when my mom found out, she didn't tell anyone. But the next day my sister's boyfriend came over and started recalling a dream he had that he was in our house and everything was different, and that there was a man dying in a hospital bed in the corner of the living room. Your friend was sleeping with your mom, obviously. Last summer we were painting my room a new color after a good decade of the same old one. After a couple of coats we left it to dry. When we came back a few hours later, the paint was perfectly dry, except for one thick streak against one wall that was melting. The old paint color was coming back through as the new color dripped down. Inexplicably, we started joking about a ghost, but it did freak me out. Not long after, my sister and I were hanging out in the kitchen getting things to drink. She set her glass down for a moment and out of nowhere it exploded. It was as if someone shot the glass. Shards flew all over the kitchen. We were stunned. I knew a change in temperature could crack glass, but she had poured room temperature liquid into it. It had no previous cracks, and it freaking exploded. It didn't just crack. In the end, they were both explainable. Apparently glass can sometimes explode like that without any impact thanks to nickel sulfide in the glass that reacts very slowly or something. And the strip of dripping paint? It was a part of the wall where the air conditioning ran. And during this stupidly hot day of summer we had the AC blasting. So, no poltergeist. But at the time these two incidents freaked me out. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.